Pittsburgh Steelers fans, welcome into another episode of the Steelers Q&A. My name is Jeremy Betts, and I am happy to be here with you on a Saturday morning. If you're checking this out live on YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook, you can view it live. We are ready to go, ready to rock and roll today. Unfortunately, I was unable to get a guest this week, but I am here to talk Steelers football, to answer questions if you have it. Jared Devil's already in the chat. I'm sure we'll have more here soon. Thank you for joining. It is Steelers football season in full swing, and the Steelers are coming off another victory. It's 2 in a row now. Let's see, can they keep stacking wins this week? I'm looking forward to this game in particular because I believe that the Steelers have a chance to really show who they are. The Houston Texans are coming off a beatdown of their division rival Jaguars, who are supposed to be the easy favorite in that division, a team that is projected to be in the playoffs, to maybe even push contender status this year and get up there into the elite echelon of AFC contenders like the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Bills, and that did not happen, or has not happened so far. The Jaguars have shown their weaknesses. They have some issues. Houston took full advantage and put up a 37-17 bomb on the Jaguars, and I think that this plays into the Steelers' hands a little bit here, and I'll tell you why. It's for the simple fact, well, two reasons here. The Steelers are going into this game with no, there's no overlooking the Texans because they just put up 37 points on the division favorite. They just walloped them, played good defense, were explosive on offense. You can't overlook that. You can't say this has been a bad team, we're a way better team. There's just no comparison there. The Steelers have to go into this game with the mentality that this is going to be a dogfight against a good upstart team, and it's not something that they can take lightly. So that's number one. Number two, I think the Steelers are primed on the defensive side of the football to make things way more difficult for CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans than the Jaguars were able to do. The simple fact of the matter is that TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are coming for CJ Stroud. They're not going to have Laramie Tunsil, their starting right tackle. They're not going to have their starting left tackle in this game. Kendrick Green is one of their starters, former Steeler Kendrick Green. Oh boy. This has the makings of an absolute bloodbath up front for Houston, and I just don't see how the Steelers leave this game with fewer than 5 sacks, fewer than maybe double-digit quarterback hits. It's going to be rough for CJ Stroud back there, and you force him into mistakes, hopefully, and you get this Houston team that's young on offense. You get them in a groove, or you get them out of their groove is what I'm trying to say, where you're just making things very difficult for them. I really, really think that it's going to be one of those games. So I'm going to bring up something here from Brian Brown here. Very true. The Houston Texans always beat the Jags, kind of like the Jags always beat the Colts. There are definite issues in this division where teams have the jump on each other. And even as coaching staffs change, as regimens change, it does seem like that these AFC South teams, they just kind of, each one owns a different one of the other, and you never know what you're going to get in those types of situations. So division football is always weird. That's another reason here to be pretty confident. If you're a Steelers fan, it would be a major upset, I believe, if the Steelers enter week 5 against the Baltimore Ravens with a 500 record. They should be 3-1 going into that situation. And hopefully not jinxing them. I don't necessarily believe in all that sort of stuff anyway. So, hey, let's just ride here. Let's throw this on. Two Girls, One Stanley Cup asks, what's your prediction on the Steelers record at the end of October? I'm going to go ahead and pull up the Steelers' schedule here just so I am not saying something wrong here. So the Steelers have 4 games here in the October timeframe. Well, tomorrow, 30 days past September. Yeah, so October 1st. October 1st is their first game against the Texans. They've got the Ravens. They've got their bye week, and then they've got Rams and Jaguars in that order here. So Steelers 2-1 going into this game against the Texans. I really think that the Steelers handle business against the Texans to get to 3-1. And then the Steelers hosting the Ravens before the bye week. This is going to be obviously AFC North ball, tough matchup. You never know what can happen, but right now with the Ravens injuries and their struggles on the offensive side of the ball, I think the Steelers can win this game at home. I really do. So I'm going to go ahead and say going into the bye, the Steelers are 4-1 coming out. So coming out of the bye, though, this is a difficult Rams team to play in their building. I know SoFi Stadium, whatever, you're probably going to get a ton of Steelers fans in that house. So it might feel like a home game for the Steelers anyway. I don't know. I just think these Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan offenses present a unique challenge to the Steelers because of what they do in the passing game schematically. All the crossing routes, all the motions, all the disguises, the things that they do out of different formations. It makes it so difficult to defend. And we saw it in week 1. Kyle Shanahan rolled into town and tore up the Steelers. And I'm worried that could be the same situation here too. I'm going to go ahead and say the Steelers lose on the road to the Rams in a close game, but the Rams offense is just too much for them. They get the ball out quickly. That helps when TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith are coming at you. You got to get the ball out quickly to eliminate that pass rush. They play a style of ball that is difficult for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'll go the Steelers are 4-2 after the Rams, and then hosting the Jaguars. I think the Steelers win this game too. AFC rival. It's a statement game for Pittsburgh. So I think the Steelers win this one. So by the end of October, I'm saying the Steelers record is 5-2 at the end of October, with Titans, Packers, and Browns upcoming in the November slate. So 5-2. Would you take that, Steeler Nation? Let me know in the comments. It's going to be fun. So thank you for the question. 2 girls, 1 Stanley Cup. Fun show here on the Steelers Q&A. Sorry, looking through some of the comments here. 5-2. That is kind of my prediction here. Brian Brown here says, let's pull this up. Brian Brown is feeling himself. Stop it. The Steelers aren't losing any games they haven't played right now. They're going 16-1. I like it. I like the attitude. I'm hoping that they do. It's a long season. It's a tough season. They're gonna have some bumps and bruises down the road, but let's just say this. I think the Steelers team can grow throughout the season, and I think that they have a schedule conducive to that. The second half of the schedule is definitely more difficult when you play the remaining 4 games against your division, and you've got some more AFC contenders in here, like the Patriots. I know that they're not playing super great right now. You also got Seattle. You got the Colts, who are playing pretty well for a young team as well. There's just some issue games here. The Cardinals have been spunky. So this game is not the cakewalk that it might have looked before. So the Packers look good at times. I know they struggled mightily on Thursday Night Football, but it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, because the Steelers, as they grow, especially on the offensive side of the ball, to match a defense that just makes so many splash plays, there's the opportunity for them to be really good and to start scoring a lot of points. I predict this week the Steelers have kind of a breakout game scoring wise. 31 points is my prediction for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. A 31-17 victory over the Texans. I think they get some turnovers and capitalize on those. I think Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and the running game get going a little bit more as well. And I don't know if Kenny Pickett has 300 yards, but he has 2 more touchdown passes at least, maybe 3. Get the ball rolling here and see if you can't get your young quarterback getting extremely confident into or get extremely confident heading into a game against the Ravens on in week 5 before your bye week. That is the best case scenario for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. Before we continue, we're going to take a quick break to get our sponsors keep our sponsors happy, let them get their plugs in here on the audio side. If you're listening live, we're not going anywhere. We'll stick around and be right back in just one moment. All right, and welcome back to the second half of the Steelers Q&A podcast. Got some more questions to get into here. Let's go ahead and jump into another question from Two Girls, One Stanley Cup. What's the most points a Matt Canada-led offense has scored? That is a good question. I want to say it was the 30-something points against the Bengals last year. So let me take a look at that. Steelers versus Bengals. Doing some research today. Checking out. Yeah, so the Steelers scored 30 points to the Bengals 37 last year. I think that is the most in the Matt Canada era. There may have been one in 2021 with Roethlisberger. Oh, you know what? That might have been it with Roethlisberger under center to see, seeing how that played out here. So let me see here. The Steelers scored 30. Oh no, I'm sorry. That's preseason ball. Scrolling through this. Yeah, it looks like 30 points against the Bengals in 2022. That's the most that we've seen in the Steelers era. If somebody in the Matt Canada era, if somebody finds something other than that, throw that in the comments and we'll pull it up here. And let's go ahead and move on to another question. Thank you for the question, Two Girls. Brian Brown says the question is, can CJ survive Alex and TJ? That is absolutely the question here for the Texans, because I feel like even a T-Rex can't save him. The Texans have a T-Rex on their offensive line in Kendrick Green. Big boy, short arms. That's why it didn't work out for him in Pittsburgh. So I don't know. Nobody's going to save CJ Stroud in this one, I don't think, from TJ and Alex. It could be really rough for the young quarterback who likes to sit back there and toss the rock. So they're going to have to work some quick game and see if they can't take advantage of the Steelers a little bit less talent on the outside. There have been some struggles for the Steelers on the outside. If you're a fantasy football head and you're looking at potential matchups in this game, Nico Collins is the type of player that the Steelers have had some struggles with defending receivers. So one of my biggest pet peeves of the season so far is that through the 3 games, the Steelers have literally done nothing to eliminate wide receiver ones for the opposing team. It was something like 91 plus fantasy points allowed to these guys between Brandon Ayuk, who you could argue is the number 1 receiver in San Francisco, opposed to Deebo Samuel, who's when Ayuk has been hurt, then obviously Samuel checks in as that number 1 player or receiver for them. But in reality, Ayuk is the more traditional receiver and handles the wide receiver 1 duties, especially this year. And then Amari Cooper goes off against the Steelers with the Browns in week 2. And then Devontae Adams just destroyed the Steelers secondary in week 3. So Nico Collins is the wide receiver 1 there. Tank Dell has been playing well. He's more of their deep threat, their speedster. I really like Tank Dell. I think he's going to be a good football player for a long time. He's not as fast as Deshaun Jackson, but he has that type of vibe to me where he can just blow up on any play. So I think that is something to watch, is his development. he's going to be huge for CJ Stroud. But Stroud, whether he has time to hit these players downfield or not, is going to be concerning for Houston. There's going to be a lot to figure out for them probably after this game. So another question here from Brian Brown: how is Houston's run defense? They're okay. They're very similar to the Raiders, so they're not giving up huge rushing numbers like the Steelers have been through 3 games as far as averages go. It's something like they're giving up 4.3 yards a carry, something along those lines to opponents. So the Steelers, excuse me, the Steelers just need to commit to the run and grind the football. And they did that a little bit more last week against the Raiders, and it correlated to a win and to the best offensive performance of the season so far. I think that you continue that theme this week. I think you need to give Jaylen Warren a little more run even than he has still gotten, and continue to feed him. He's the explosive player out of this backfield. I'm not out on Najee Harris by any stretch, but I do think that the Steelers need to check their utilization. Najee Harris, I've made the argument here just in regards to this. They need to get some explosion early, really involve Warren early in the game plan. And then if you've got a lead, if you're holding on to a lead and you really want to play clock ball, that's when you get Najee Harris involved. When he needs to get the first down to close out a game, a lot of times he's very good at doing that. When you just tell him, okay, just run the ball as hard as you can straight ahead, and you've got 3 downs to do it, he does a good job in that regard. So the battering ram you bring out once you've broken them down with the explosive game. So I think Najee Harris has a major role in this offense still. I'm not saying you eliminate him at all, but I think Jaylen Warren just has to be more involved if you're going to be more explosive on offense. All right, let's see. Another question here. This one from Alexis B. Do you think the Steelers get an interception against Stroud? I think they do. I think the havoc that they cause up front is going to correlate to a turnover here. And Stroud hasn't thrown an interception yet this season, but the Steelers can have made rookie quarterbacks look in over their heads in the past. I think they can do that again with the Texans' lack of protection up front and the Steelers' ability to cause havoc. So interception feels very likely with the ball hawking instincts of the Steelers secondary. You can say what you want about Levi Wallace, but he knows how to catch free balls in the secondary. He lets a lot of receivers run free, but he knows how to haul in interceptions. Patrick Peterson has a lot of interceptions. I think he's got the most of any active player, and he's on the Steelers roster. Obviously, you've got Minkah Fitzpatrick back there. These guys can take the ball away, and if you get enough pressure up front, then you start to really force a guy like CJ Stroud, who probably definitely hasn't seen the speed and quickness and attacking ability of the Steelers front four like in any other game this season. So good luck to CJ Stroud this week. I mean that with sincerity, because he's got his hands full with his pass rush. He's going to have to keep his head on a swivel. The Steelers have a chance here, like I said at the beginning, to kind of put a statement down and just show how good they can actually be. I think they do that this week, and it continues to be some growth here. But that's not to say that they would be without any bumps and bruises, or bumps in the road, I should say, not bumps and bruises. The penalty issue, the physicality is there. I really like to see that, but you'd like to see guys like Minkah Fitzpatrick make it harder for the refs to throw the initial flag. The refs threw a flag on even like the Cole Holcomb tackle against the Raiders, where he hit on Devontae Adams, where he knocked the ball loose. That should have never been thrown. That was just bad bad vision by the refs. They saw a big hit and they're like, oh, big hit, so I got to throw a flag. And then they talked it through and realized that it was not a flag. The Minka hit, obviously you hit him high. Minka hit him high, and it wasn't forcible contact to the head, but it was a big hit in real time. You could see how the refs could have mistaken that in real time. And then what do you do that you can't replay review? So there's something to be said for that, although it was a horrendous call, in my opinion. I just think that you got to make things harder for the refs to throw that initial flag. That you don't want them throwing flags on everything and then having to go back and say, oh, we're going to pick this one up. Let's make it harder on them. Make it go hit the rib cage in that situation. You're going to get him full blast anyway. No need to hit him up high, or better yet, go after the football. Go after that football and knock that football out. So there's some things you can do here to clean up the act a little bit. Don't get sloppy, Pittsburgh. That's how you could lose a game like this. So that is just something I would say here. So let's pull up another question from Brian Brown. So the Texans should be vulnerable to play action. Do they have any corners left? They have some corners left. The defense is okay and growing. Now, I think Jalen Petrie, their safety, who they drafted last year, he's a second-year player, is going to play. He's a good player. He can take away portions of the field with his coverage ability, and then he's good in run support. But on the outside is where the weakness is. You can beat them out there. So the Texans should absolutely be vulnerable to play action. If the Steelers can establish some sort of ground game early, then the play action passing game should work. That's when we've seen the Steelers at their best, obviously. Brian Brown, you see that in this situation as well too. So when you're talking about what the Steelers can do offensively, then yes, absolutely they can handle a Texans team if the play action gets rolling, and I think that it will in this game for certain. I did not know this, but Ollie Howard species 5618. I love these YouTube usernames. Love trying to read these. Last rookie quarterback to best time was Dak, I think. I'll have to look that up as well, but he might be right. Dak Prescott and the Cowboys, that was a crazy game. Ezekiel Elliott also went off in that game against the Steelers. That was the fake spike to Antonio Brown to put the Steelers up at the end of near the end of the fourth quarter, and then Zeke Elliott just breaking a huge run to score. Ryan Shazier missing a tackle in the backfield on that one. I remember that game. That was a tough game. Steelers were on a losing streak, but looking better. The Cowboys were obviously on a winning streak, and it seemed like a turnaround game for the Steelers, even if they lost that game. A fun memory there. Let's see. Brian Brown. So if Minka goes low, he's dirty, but if he goes high, it's a penalty. BS. It is BS. I think, like I said, go for the midsection instead. Hit that flak jacket a little bit. Zach Wilson got us last year. Zach Wilson was actually a second-year player last year, so I don't believe that wouldn't count for the rookie quarterback situation. So this being his third year and last year being his second, but yeah, I couldn't believe Zach Wilson had that sort of game against the Steelers last year. Best game of his entire career. The Steelers have a tendency to do that for some quarterbacks as well. So that's something to consider here. Not typically rookies, but sometimes second-year players, things like that. Justin Fields has his best game as a passer against the Pittsburgh Steelers as well in a crazy Monday Night Football game where the ref hip checked a Bears player and threw a flag, or vice versa. Going down memory lane here a little bit, but that was a fun matchup too. So maybe the Steelers, obviously the Steelers go into this game, like I mentioned at the top, with concern about this Texans team since Houston dropped 37 points on Jacksonville last week. I think if Houston is 0-3 going into this game, and laid an egg last week, that it could be a little bit more difficult for Pittsburgh, because you get that potential that the Steelers could be overlooking Houston and maybe a trap game. And I know our guy Tony Defio made the point that Steelers shouldn't view this as a trap game because they're just not good enough yet. The Steelers aren't, and that should be very true. You should never take anything. You should never consider yourselves above another NFL team. The Cowboys learned that last week against the Arizona Cardinals. So, all right. If you got any more questions, go ahead and get those in. Let's see. This is a good question here. Do the Steelers need to make the playoffs for Matt Canada to keep his job? This again from Two Girls, One Stanley Cup. Thank you again for the question. The Steelers do need to make the playoffs for Matt Canada to keep his job. The Steelers need to make the playoffs and be competent on offense for him to keep his job. I think that happens. I'm not saying necessarily that he's coming back, even if that happens. This is the bare minimum, I think, for Canada to have a chance to keep his job. I think that the potential that Matt Canada gets fired, even if the Steelers make the playoffs and look somewhat decent on offense, is still pretty high, because this is a young quarterback. This is a team that has a lot of youth on offense, and you don't want to put them behind the 8 ball another season if the growth is just not there. And if, it's just the natural growth and development of these players that make Matt Canada look a little better this season, that's not enough reason to keep him around when you've got offensive gurus clamoring for jobs across the NFL, coming from systems much more tried and true than Matt Canada's collegiate system, frankly, that he is trying here, and the Steelers are experimenting with. This is the bare minimum for me to just consider, to have the conversation of Matt Canada coming back. The Steelers need to be averaging well into the 20s of points per game. Kenny Pickett's going to have to throw frequently for 2+ touchdown passes. They're going to have to be frequent games where you're seeing, oh, this Steelers offense is clicking, and not just, oh, they clicked on that one drive in the late second quarter and then the rest was a slog fest. That's not going to do it, even if the Steelers make the playoffs, because their defense creates enough plays for you. So yeah, this is the bare minimum for me here. Brian Brown says, we can always take comfort in the knowledge that Gunner can get his feet down on a sideline throw or a kick. That might be the most boneheaded play I've ever seen in football, and I've seen some doozies. So, congratulations, Gunnar Olszewski, on that. Let's see here. How long does Pat P hold the outside cornerback position before JPJ takes over and Pat P rovers? This is a tough question for the Steelers staff, the Steelers coaching staff. How do you deploy these guys? Because outside of the picks, Levi Wallace has been an absolute sieve to wide receivers on the outside. And teams are realizing, oh, let's just go ahead and line up our top receiver on the left side every time, for the most part. Let's just do that, because Levi Wallace can't stop him. And unless the defense really gets going, unless the front seven really gets after the quarterback, Levi Wallace doesn't do anything except let players catch balls and then hopefully make the tackle. So the Steelers could play other people inside and move Pat P more permanently to the left cornerback spot, or put Joey Porter Jr. at left cornerback and leave Patrick Peterson at right cornerback and put Levi Wallace on the rotation as far as coming off the bench to play snaps. But I don't know. There's going to have to be some. There's going to be plenty of rotation of all of these players, but I would just say the weak link so far to me has been Levi Wallace. He's taken advantage of a couple situations where he's been in the right spot at the right time, but still it's not necessarily outside of the one pick against the Raiders, because he had lockdown coverage on a guy. Overthrows, tip balls, things like that have been have been more or less the reason he's come down with some picks here. So I don't know. JPJ for Levi Wallace seems to me like the play I would make. Patrick Peterson has at least been stickier in coverage for the most part than Levi Wallace has. So, all righty, let's see here. Let's see if we got anything. Thank you, Dave Shipley, for that question. Sorry for not getting your name in there earlier. Let's see. Ollie says, I just think our offense needs or looks too different from the high-powered schemes for Canada to keep a job regardless of this year's result. That's kind of how I feel too. It does look too different. When you look across the league, even offenses that struggle to put together consistency from game to game, they at least do something well for the most part. There's teams that just can run the football. Even the Chicago Bears can run the football, all right? And their offense stinks. Their offense is terrible, but they can run the football. They've got that. You're going to run the football. The Atlanta Falcons, they're going to run the football. And their passing game is not good. Desmond Ridder is struggling. He has not looked good this year, but they can run the football well every time. And I don't know, Matt, Canada is just not consistent enough in that regard. And the elite offenses of the league are so far removed from this Steelers offensive design as far as complexity and big playability. It's the segregation of those two when you just look at them side by side, completely opposite. So I think that is the question here as well, is even if the Steelers are successful this season, make the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game, what's the ceiling there? What you do as a team every offseason is you try to get better than the team you were last year. Improve upon that so you can take the next step. And a lot of times that's bringing in new players for different roles. But in the Steelers' case this year, that might just be, okay, our offense took a step forward this year, but this is their ceiling under Matt Canada. So let's go get a new offensive coordinator who can raise our ceiling even a little bit more and get us out of these offensive doldrums. So that is what I think the Steelers need to consider here. I know there's going to be the call for consistency and for, continued growth within a system. But if that system now for 3 years has blatant glaring issues like it does that have to be overcome on the field by exceptional play, then you say, okay, we've got exceptional players now that made this scheme work. Let's go out and get somebody who can make it just easier on them. Let's go out and get a Kyle Shanahan subject, if you will, a Kyle Shanahan system caller. Let's go out and get somebody from the Brian Johnson realm, or I'm sorry, Ben Johnson in Detroit, who's been killing it. Let's go get an Arthur Smith type play caller. You just got to consider that as a potential chance to improve. And yeah, I get it. Consistency and growth and development in a system, but systems have caps, just like players have caps. And if the players are pushing against that cap, but they just can't get through it because the offensive coordinator is limiting you, then get rid of that offensive coordinator and get somebody who can raise your ceiling. That is what I see as a potential chance for the Steelers to improve in one area there. So, throw up a couple more before we get out of here. Dave Shipley asks, Nate Herbig starting at right guard this week might be an upgrade. Thoughts? Brian Brown says he agrees with Dave here. So got some that at least say that Nate Herbig could be an upgrade on James Daniels. I think in the run game, he absolutely could. That's another reason I'm kind of bullish on the Steelers run game this week, is that I think Nate Herbig obviously is just a mauler. He's a road grader. And maybe that's what Chooks needs on the right side. I have not liked the fact that the Steelers are basically a finesse offensive line on the right side and a power offensive line on the left side. It doesn't work well for spreading out the help, if you will, for each of these players. James Daniels and Chuks Okorafor are better in pass protection, but the left side of that offensive line definitely drives the run game. We saw the breakout runs for Jalen Warren and Najee Harris last week typically happened when they were getting double team pushes on the left side with Siamalu and Mason Cole, or Siamalu and Dan Moore Jr. Those guys are definitely more of the road graders. So Nate Herbig coming in on that right side at right guard might just make the Steelers more might make them more physical up front, and that could be an upgrade in that regard for sure. I do think James Daniels, though, is a really good player. So I'm not going to say Nate Herbig, who's been a backup for the majority of his career, just immediately comes in and is a better player than James Daniels. That seems a little unlikely to me, but all right, let's see. This is a good question from Thomas Riley. Jeremy, what OC do you see the Steelers could bring in? I'd have to look at the up and comers from some of these different organizations. I'm sure that there are disciples of Shanahan, Sean McVay, Mike McDaniel, maybe somebody like Mike McDaniel's OC. I don't know who that is off the top of my head. I need to find that out, but I would have more of a grip on that as the season progresses here. But, somebody who's kind of sitting under an offensive minded head coach who, is learning their system from them. Matt LaFleur's OC in Green Bay. Like I said, I don't know who these guys are, but something similar to that, where you've got a guy who's been an understudy, that's got an offensive coordinator title, like Eric Bieniemy did with the Kansas City Chiefs under Andy Reid, but Andy Reid's the guy calling the shots. Mike McDaniel's the one calling the shots in Miami. Matt LaFleur's the one calling the shots in Green Bay. Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, they're calling the shots in those places. So if you look at the efficiency charts, those are the four teams to me that are just so efficient on offense. And you can just see the charts. It's in the numbers. These guys and their offense, it works. It just works in today's NFL. So offensively, if that is something that you're looking to improve on, you should go in that sort of direction. All right. Let me pull this up from Two Girls, One Stanley Cup. Byron Leftwich would be an upgraded OC. I think he could be an upgrade on Matt Canada. I don't think he's the best potentially that the Steelers could do. I think that the Steelers would need to do a lot of their research, and if it's Glenn Thomas next year, that's a problem. I know nothing about the guy. It could work out. But if it's Glenn Thomas next year, that is your offensive coordinator and you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, then the system is still broken, and you might get lucky, but you're probably not going to get lucky. The system would be broken at that point. Todd Haley was mentioned in here earlier. Todd Haley was a great offensive coordinator, and he helped Ben Roethlisberger in so many ways, getting rid of the football faster and trusting his playmakers on the outside instead of his own playmaking ability to get his playmakers open. And not that Ben wasn't doing those sorts of things, but I think the way Ben liked to play football at that point in his career just clashed too much with Haley. But I would love to see a Haley-like play caller, somebody who's established, who's been there, done that, come back in. I've talked about Jim Caldwell a lot in other podcasts, where he's the kind of guy who's been there, done that on offense, and not a great head coach, but knows how to get offenses going. And same thing. The Browns did this on the defensive side of the ball this year by bringing in Jim Schwartz. Not a great head coach, but man, can he put together a defense for you? Man, can he change you from a Mamsy-Pansy outfit to just a road grading defense. The Browns have one of the best defenses in the league because Schwartz is there. You don't have to get a guy who has won Super Bowls at the NFL level, or who has done well at the collegiate level. Even go get a guy who's been there, done that in the NFL on offense. That's kind of my opinion on that. So, all righty. that's going to do it here. Let's see. Well, I'll just bring this one up here real quick to kind of close this out here. Steelers need to target Muth more. They really do. Brian Brown asks, do you think the Steelers will target Muth more? Please. I can hear the begging in your voice. I assume you're on your knees in front of your computer screen now, just begging. But yeah, I would say the same thing. Get more targets to Pat Freiermuth. Give George Pickens a wide receiver one workload. Please just be sensible about these things. These are the types of things that can elevate your offense and things that you're not doing. Why are we throwing 4 back shoulder balls to Calvin Austin? Why and one to George Pickens in a game? Why is that happening? That should not be happening. And when your quarterback does that consistently and not just on a one-off situation, that's coaching. Calvin Austin is not that type of player. Don't do it. Deontay Johnson is not a vertical threat for all intents and purposes. You don't need to target him vertically 5 times a game, which is what the Steelers have done in the past. Those are the kind of things that get me riled up. All right. Hey, thank you so much for joining the show. Again, I apologize for not getting a guest on. It's been a little more difficult getting guests for the Saturday morning block here. But I'm going to try to get somebody maybe here this next week. But if not, I'm here and we're going to talk Steelers football. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to get rolling with this, and we're just going to have a lot of fun. Thank you to everybody who joined in. Thank you for all your questions. For more Steelers content, be sure to stay tuned to Steel Curtain Network and the Steel Curtain SteelCurtainNetwork.com for all your Steelers ins and outs. I haven't been writing about the Steelers as much recently. I've been doing a lot more for the NFL side of things, like the whole league type stuff, but still there. And still obviously on the Steel Curtain Network, getting those down. And if you are wanting to hear me talk some fantasy football stuff, I'm doing 2 shows a week now on the Fans First NFL feed. It's called the Fantasy First podcast. And on Tuesdays, we're breaking down injuries and waiver wire ads. And then on Thursday, going over the TNF schedule and DFS lineups for the upcoming week. So if you're a DFS player or you want to do like a one night stand on the Thursday game, then I've got some props and things like that for you there on that show. Definitely check that out and follow me on Twitter, Twix, like I call it, at the best 93 THEBETZ 93. Thanks you all for joining me. Let's get a win this week. It's going to be fun. Go Steelers. Jeremy's out.